I was sitting in the same worn-out chair they'd given me 8 years ago, the one with the squeak in the left armrest. I'd asked twice for it to be replaced, but like everything else at Caraway Consulting, budget priorities always came first. Across from me, Martin, the partner I reported to, slid a folder across his desk without looking me in the eye. His expression was one I'd memorized by now, a polite grimace hidden under a corporate smile. I didn't need to open it to know what was inside. Rejection number 10. 10 times passed over for senior consultant, and I already knew who had gotten it this time. Trevor, 2 years at the firm. 2 years compared to my 8. The thing is, Elias, Martin said, leaning forward like he was about to let me in on some trade secret. Our Q3 cycle isn't the best timing for new leadership transitions, but I want you to know your name is at the very top of the list for next cycle. I nodded like I believed him, like I hadn't heard nearly the same line every year since 2017, like I hadn't trained half the people they promoted over me. Then, out of nowhere, I laughed. Not the kind of laugh you share at an inside joke. No, the kind of laugh that unsettles a room. The kind that says, "Congratulations, I've officially snapped." Martin's smile twitched. "Something funny?" "Yeah," I said, still chuckling. "Me, I'm the joke. 10 years of grinding, and I still fall for the same promise every time." For the first time in years, he didn't have a rehearsed reply. He just sat there blinking like his script had disappeared. That was the moment it happened. That was the exact second I decided I was done playing their game. I didn't say it out loud, but in my head, the words were clear. I'm burning this whole thing down. Oh, I should probably introduce myself. My name's Elias Ward. I was 35 when this happened, working as a consultant at Caraway, a mid-sized firm that loved to act like it was the next McKinsey. We specialized in digital transformation for finance companies. Fancy words for we fix broken systems and charge big invoices. 8 years I'd been there. 8 years of being the guy they called at midnight when a client's system crashed. 8 years of saving accounts other consultants had botched. 8 years of being told I was the backbone of the firm, but apparently not backbone enough for a promotion. Let me give you some context. Caraway Consulting was started by 3 former Ivy League buddies who liked to brag about how different their culture was. Different, sure. Different in that they treated favoritism as a business strategy. Martin had been there since the early days. I joined when the office still had folding tables instead of real desks. I automated reporting that cut delivery time in half. I salvaged our biggest client, Greyline Financial, after our lead consultant quit mid-project. I consistently worked 60-hour weeks, and yet, every time promotions came up, there was always something missing. You need more client-facing experience, they'd say. So I took on direct client engagements. You need more leadership exposure. So I led teams of 5, then 10, then 15. You need more technical credibility. So I got certified in every platform we touched. Every time I cleared the bar, they moved it again. And every time, someone else, someone less capable but more connected, got the nod. Trevor was the latest. His biggest achievement was managing to wear a suit without sweating through it. But he golfed with one of the partners, so, naturally, senior consultant. That day, after Martin fed me the same recycled line, I walked back to my desk. Trevor was at the break room, holding up his shiny new business cards for anyone who would look. Senior consultant. The title I'd been chasing for 3 years. I thought about the hours I'd poured into this company, the weekends missed, the birthdays cut short, the thankless rescues that had kept clients from walking away, and something inside me hardened. For years, I thought the problem was me. Not political enough, not charming enough, wrong background, wrong connections. I spent so much energy trying to crack the code. But watching Trevor parade his new title around, I realized there was no code. The game was rigged, always had been. That night, I went home and sat in the dark with a drink in my hand, replaying every rejection in my head. At 2 a.m., I called my younger brother Aaron, who was the one person I could be unfiltered with. I ranted for an hour, listing every slight, every lie, every time they'd told me next cycle. When I finally ran out of steam, he said just 4 words that flipped my world. So quit giving more. I frowned. What's that supposed to mean? You've already proven yourself. You don't need to keep bleeding for people who don't see you. Quit giving them your best. That's not who I am, I said automatically. Maybe, Aaron replied, but maybe it's who you need to become. I didn't sleep that night. I kept turning it over in my head. The way he said it, the way it made too much sense. And by sunrise, something clicked. I had the knowledge. I had the client trust. I had the leverage. All I needed was a plan. The next morning, I walked into Caraway like nothing had changed. Same suit, same coffee, same nod to the receptionist who never remembered my name. But something was different. For the first time in 8 years, I wasn't walking in to prove myself. I wasn't chasing their approval anymore. Instead, I was hunting. Step 1 of my plan was simple. Document everything. Every shortcut I'd built into our systems. Every process I'd created when official procedures failed. Every client fire I'd personally put out. I didn't trust their servers, so I built a private encrypted notebook. My property, not theirs. Step 2 was harder, mapping out my leverage. I called it my dependency map. It wasn't just about what I did. It was about what they couldn't do without me. I charted the 5 biggest clients who trusted me directly. Greyline Financial, Ardent Bank, Novatrax, Hilford Capital, and Crestwell Insurance. Each of them had called me. Not Martin, not Trevor, not the partners. When things went sideways, I had relationships. They had dependency, and the more I mapped it, the clearer it became. I was holding Caraway together like duct tape. But documenting wasn't enough. If I was going to pull this off, I needed to make myself even more central before I made my move. Counterintuitive, right? But if I was going to walk out, I wanted the floor to collapse behind me. So I volunteered for the most complex problems. I stayed calm when others panicked. I positioned myself not just as reliable, but as irreplaceable. Meanwhile, I started building my escape hatch. I reached out to old colleagues who'd left consulting, grabbed coffee, listened more than I spoke, dropped hints about maybe exploring new opportunities without saying too much. And at night, I started sketching a new future. Not another job, my own firm, a consultancy where I called the shots, where promotions weren't a lottery of favoritism. I wasn't naive. Starting a company meant risk. Bills to pay, clients to land, no safety net. But staying at Caraway, that was its own risk. A slow death by disappointment. 3 months into my plan, something unexpected happened. Caraway landed a huge client, Helix Trust, a regional bank. The partners called it a game-changer account. Guess who they put in charge of the rollout? Not Trevor, not any of the so-called senior consultants. Me. Elias, this is your chance to show leadership, Martin said, like I hadn't been doing exactly that for years. I smiled. Of course. Inside, I was already cataloguing every detail, every late-night call, every custom solution. Every time Helix bypassed the partners to come directly to me, another knot in the rope I was slowly wrapping around Caraway's neck. By month 4, I had a decision to make. I could either keep gathering leverage quietly or start testing it. I chose the latter. One afternoon, I had coffee with Greg, a former Caraway consultant now working at a competitor. Halfway through, he leaned in and said, "You know, if you ever broke off on your own, I'd send clients your way. Hell, I'd probably join you." That night, I couldn't sleep. My plan suddenly felt real, not just an idea, a possibility. But there was one thing I hadn't accounted for. Trevor. Promotion, number 10. The golden boy. One night, I caught him snooping around my desk after hours. When I asked what he was doing, he stammered something about grabbing a stapler. But on his screen, I saw my name in an email draft to Martin. Subject line, concerns about Elias. That's when I realized something. They didn't just underestimate me. They feared me. I wasn't invisible anymore. I was a threat. That fear gave me clarity. I had 6 months left on the timeline I'd given myself. 6 months to lock in my plan, then walk out on my terms. But Trevor's little stunt made me accelerate. If they were starting to sense I had more power than they realized, I couldn't risk waiting too long. The next morning, I bought a domain name. I filed paperwork for an LLC, Ward Advisory Group, just on paper, nothing public yet. But it was a seed, and for the first time in years, I felt alive. By month 5, my plan wasn't just an idea anymore. It was breathing, growing, almost alive. I had my dependency map, my encrypted notebook, and my LLC filed. What I didn't have yet was the nerve to set everything in motion. That nerve came in the form of Trevor. Again. One Friday afternoon, I got pulled into Martin's office. Trevor was sitting there, smirking like a kid who'd tattled to the teacher. Martin cleared his throat. "Elias, we've had some concerns raised about how you're handling the Helix Trust account." I blinked. "Concerns? Apparently you've been too independent. Clients are contacting you directly instead of going through the proper chain." It undermines leadership when I laughed. I couldn't help it. The man was parroting the exact behaviors that had saved our biggest clients more times than I could count. So, I said, leaning back, you're upset that the client trusts me more than they trust you. Martin shifted uncomfortably. Trevor's smirk faltered. That was the moment I stopped caring about optics. If they were going to paint me as a problem, then I might as well become one, on my own terms. The next week, I began phase 2, positioning myself as the solution to problems they didn't even know existed. When Novatrax's data migration failed at 2 a.m., who fixed it? Me. When Hilford's CIO threatened to cancel, who smoothed it over? Me. Each time, I logged everything into my private notebook. But I wasn't just documenting anymore. I was curating, building what I started calling my indispensability portfolio. Every late-night rescue, every workaround, every client email that said, "Elias, you saved us." All of it became evidence, not for Caraway, for my future clients. The trickiest part was detaching emotionally. I'd trained myself for years to treat every slight as fuel, every rejection as motivation to keep climbing. Now I had to untrain myself. When Martin took credit for my idea in a meeting, I said nothing. When Trevor stumbled through a presentation I'd built for him, I let him. Because in my head, I wasn't theirs anymore. But just when I thought I was in control, a twist hit me. Greyline Financial, the client I'd practically saved from collapse 2 years earlier, announced they were putting their consulting contracts up for bid. Normally, Caraway would have locked it down without competition. But apparently, my quiet detachment hadn't gone unnoticed. The Greyline CIO reached out to me privately. "Elias," she said on the call, "I'll be blunt. We like you. We don't trust Caraway without you. So tell me honestly, are you staying with them long term?" My stomach dropped. If I lied, I could protect my plan. If I told the truth, I risked blowing it all up too soon. I played for time. "I'm evaluating my options," she chuckled softly. "Good answer. Let me know when you've decided, because Greyline's contract will follow you, not Caraway." That night, I realized something I hadn't allowed myself to admit. I didn't have to wait 6 months. My escape hatch was already half open. Still, I needed money. So I tightened my budget, cut luxuries, and funneled every extra dollar into a savings account. By month 6, I had enough to survive half a year without income. Risky, but doable. And then came the breaking point. Trevor got promoted again. This time to senior manager. 2 years at the company, and suddenly he was above me in the org chart. Martin framed it as rewarding his potential. I didn't get angry. I didn't argue. I just smiled, shook Trevor's hand, and congratulated him. That night, I drafted my resignation letter, but I didn't hand it in. Not yet. Because here's where I added my own twist. I wasn't just going to quit. I was going to time it perfectly. Helix Trust's go live was in 8 weeks. The single most complex rollout Caraway had ever attempted. And guess who was the linchpin of the entire project? Me. So I waited, I worked. I smiled at Martin in the hallways. I let Trevor give me orders in meetings. And all the while, I quietly polished Ward Advisory Group. I designed a simple website. I built a portfolio deck with anonymized case studies. I even opened a separate business bank account. 8 weeks later, the Helix rollout was live. Barely. It only worked because I held it together with late nights and duct tape. The clients sent glowing feedback directly to me. And the next morning, I walked into Martin's office without knocking. I placed the envelope on his desk. "What's this?" he asked, frowning. "My resignation," he blinked. "You're kidding." 2 weeks' notice. Standard. He flipped the letter open, scanning it like maybe there was some catch. "Is this about Trevor's promotion?" "Elias, we can revisit that conversation in the fall." I shook my head. "This isn't a negotiation." "I'm done." Martin's jaw tightened. "We need you, Elias. You're leading Greyline, Helix, Novatrax." I stood. "Then maybe you should have thought of that 10 rejections ago." And with that, I left his office. My heart was pounding, my palms were sweating, but I'd never felt more certain in my life. Because this wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning. The day after I handed in my resignation, the office felt different. People stared at me longer than usual. Whispers followed me down the hall. Trevor looked nervous every time I walked by. It didn't take long to figure out why. Greyline Financial had already heard the news. Their CIO called Caraway's CEO directly and said, "If Elias isn't on our account, we need to reconsider this contract." I only knew this because one of the admin staff, who I'd always treated kindly, pulled me aside and whispered, "They're freaking out upstairs. You broke something." I smiled. Good. By day 3 of my notice, the partners realized the scale of the problem. Suddenly, Martin was scheduling knowledge transfer meetings, begging me to document years of fixes, shortcuts, and client quirks. I agreed to attend, but only in spirit. I didn't sabotage anything. I didn't delete files. I just gave them what they asked for at surface level. Enough to check the box, not enough to replace me. Trevor tried to corner me in the break room. "You think you're better than this place?" he sneered. I sipped my coffee. "No, Trevor. I know I am." His smirk faltered. Day 5, the CEO himself, Charles Caraway, summoned me. His office was all glass walls and expensive furniture. He leaned forward, fingers steepled. "Elias, we've underestimated you," he said. "We want to make this right. Senior consultant, effective immediately." 20% raise, I almost laughed. "That's funny. 10 years I waited. And suddenly now you've discovered my worth." Charles's jaw tightened. "What would it take for you to stay?" I shook my head. "It's not about money. It's about respect. And that ship sailed years ago." He leaned back, studying me like a chess piece he'd just lost. "Think carefully. Without us, where will you go?" I smiled. "Watch me." By the end of my second week, desperation had fully set in. Systems were breaking. Clients were threatening to walk. And Helix Trust, the account I'd saved with duct tape, had already scheduled a meeting with me, not Caraway. The partners made one last attempt. Martin cornered me in the lobby on my last day. "You're making a mistake, Elias. You won't last 6 months on your own." I picked up my box of desk plants and coffee mugs. "Funny, Martin. That's exactly what you said the last 9 times I got passed over." And then I walked out. Here's where the real revenge began. The Monday after I left Caraway, I had my first official meeting as founder of Ward Advisory Group. My office, my kitchen table, my staff, just me and a laptop, but sitting across from me on that video call was Greyline's CIO. She didn't waste time. "We're ready to move our contract," she said. "And to be clear, Elias, we're moving it to you, not to Caraway." My throat tightened. "I appreciate the trust. Truly. Don't make us regret it." That one contract was bigger than my entire yearly salary at Caraway. With it, Ward Advisory Group wasn't just real, it was profitable. 2 weeks later, Novatrax followed. Then Hilford. Each conversation was the same, polite, professional, but firm. They didn't want Caraway, they wanted me. By month 2, I had 3 clients under my banner and more revenue than I'd ever earned in my career. Meanwhile, Caraway was unraveling. Word spread through the consulting grapevine fast. Clients were leaving. Deadlines were collapsing. Trevor, now their shiny new senior manager, was drowning. One of my old colleagues sent me a late-night text. "They talk about you like you're Voldemort. They won't even say your name, but they blame every failure on your absence." I laughed so hard I nearly spilled my drink. This was revenge, yes. Sweet, sharp revenge. But it wasn't the cartoon kind where I threw flames behind me as I walked away. No. My revenge was measured, sustainable, watching them flail while I thrived. And the best part, I hadn't stolen anything. I hadn't broken a contract. I hadn't sabotaged them. All I'd done was stop carrying their weight. Running my own firm was nothing like working at Caraway. At Caraway, every day felt like survival, keeping clients happy while dodging politics. At Ward Advisory Group, every day felt like creation. No more waiting for approval. No more watered-down decisions made by committee. Every choice was mine. Every win was mine. Of course, the beginning wasn't glamorous. My office was still my kitchen table. My coffee machine doubled as my intern. I built pitch decks at 2 a.m. and fielded client calls from my living room, sometimes with laundry buzzing in the background. But I was free, and freedom has a flavor you don't forget once you've tasted it. Greyline came first, then Novatrax, then Hilford. Each one signed contracts directly with me. Not Ward Advisory Group, not yet, but with me, Elias Ward. That distinction mattered. Clients weren't here because I had a fancy logo or a 10-person team. They were here because they trusted me. Still, I knew that couldn't last forever. If I wanted to build something lasting, I needed more than contracts. I needed a brand, so I invested in a proper website, hired a designer to create a logo, even bought business cards. Not because clients cared, but because I did. Each small step turned Ward Advisory Group from a scrappy kitchen table project into a real firm. The work was brutal. I wore every hat: consultant, accountant, marketer, IT guy. But with every late night, I felt myself rebuilding not just a career, but an identity. Then came the ripple effect. Word got out in the consulting community, quiet at first, then louder. Elias started his own firm. Clients are leaving Caraway. Ward Advisory Group is making moves. I started getting calls from old colleagues. Some were curious, some were desperate. One call stood out. Greg, the guy I'd had coffee with months before. Elias, I've been watching what you're doing. Caraway's bleeding. If you're hiring, I'm interested. I paused. Hiring. I hadn't even thought about bringing someone else on. I was too focused on survival. But now, survival wasn't the question. Growth was. So I brought Greg in. Contract basis at first, then part-time, then full-time. He wasn't just an extra set of hands. He was proof that Ward Advisory Group could be bigger than just me. With Greg on board, I finally exhaled. I wasn't carrying everything alone anymore. Meanwhile, Caraway was imploding. By month 5, rumors hit LinkedIn. 2 partners had resigned. Helix Trust, their Game Changer account, was shopping for new consultants. And Trevor, the golden boy, the one they'd bet on instead of me, was missing deadlines left and right. An old colleague sent me a screenshot of a staff email. Charles Caraway himself had written, "We are experiencing turbulence due to unforeseen transitions." Unforeseen transitions. That was corporate speak for Elias left, and now everything's burning. I won't lie. It felt good. Better than good. It felt righteous. Not because I wanted them destroyed, but because they'd built their success on ignoring me, underestimating me, dismissing me, and now the foundation they'd neglected was crumbling without me there to patch the cracks. By month 6, Ward Advisory Group wasn't just surviving. We were thriving. We'd signed a 4th client, Crestwell Insurance. Revenue had doubled. Greg and I moved into a tiny downtown office, barely big enough for 2 desks, but it had glass windows and a door with our name on it. I remember standing in that office the first day, looking at the logo on the frosted glass, Ward Advisory Group. It didn't feel real, but it was. I had built something out of nothing, and Caraway? They were still spiraling. For the first time in my life, I wasn't looking up at someone else's ladder. I was building my own. By the 1-year mark, Ward Advisory Group was no longer just a scrappy startup. We had 6 clients, 3 employees, and a small but steady presence in the consulting world. I'd stopped thinking about Caraway on a daily basis. Sure, I heard whispers. Another lost client, another resignation. But I was too busy steering my own ship to obsess over their collapse. Then one Monday morning, my assistant poked her head into my office. "Elias, there's someone here to see you." I looked up and froze. It was Trevor. He looked nothing like the smug golden boy I remembered. His suit was wrinkled, his tie loosened, his confidence, the smirk that once irritated me beyond words, was gone. We shook hands awkwardly, then sat across from each other in my office. "So," I said carefully, "what brings you here?" He sighed. "I won't waste your time. Caraway's in freefall. Helix is gone. Crestwell's gone. They're closing offices and I got laid off last week." I leaned back, studying him. "I see." He swallowed hard. "I know we had our differences. But Elias, I need a job. I've seen what you're building here. If you'll consider it, I'd work for you." The silence between us was thick. Part of me wanted to laugh. Part of me wanted to throw him out of the office. After everything, the promotions he'd stolen, the backstabbing, the years of being overlooked. Now he was here, asking for a seat at my table. But another part of me felt clarity. This was the closure I hadn't realized I needed. I shook my head slowly. "Trevor, Ward Advisory Group isn't built on shortcuts or favoritism. It's built on respect. You had your chance to show me that years ago. I wish you luck, but it won't be here." His face fell. For once there was no smirk, no arrogance, just a man finally facing the cost of his choices. He stood, shook my hand again, and left. That evening, I poured myself a drink and stood by the office window. The city buzzed below, lights flickering, cars weaving through the streets. I thought about where I'd been a year earlier, hunched at a Caraway desk, invisible, dismissed, grinding my soul away for scraps of recognition. And I thought about where I was now, leading a firm of my own, trusted by clients, respected by peers, steering a future I'd built with my own hands. Revenge hadn't been a single act. It wasn't slamming a door or burning a bridge. It was walking away, building something better, and letting the people who underestimated me face the consequences of their choices. That was the real victory. With that said, thanks for watching. Until next time, make sure to like and subscribe for more content like this.